Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin miners and whether or not they are a good investment. We've seen some, we've seen some basically splitting in the performance or separation in the performance between Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin. So whereas the two should be closely correlated, we've often seen breaks in this correlation. And recently, when Bitcoin reached its all-time high, we didn't really see a similar run-up in Bitcoin miners, although today they're doing quite well. So this got people nervous and started questioning the entire thesis behind Bitcoin miners. So we're gonna look at Bitcoin miners and how they performed historically and what are the reasons that may make them a bad or a good investment during these times. So without further ado, let's get started. As always, not financial advice, so be sure to do your own due diligence before making any investing decisions. So let's start with what makes people nervous about Bitcoin miners. The first reason why people get nervous around this time about Bitcoin miners is the obvious approaching of the Bitcoin halving. So this is where the rewards that miners get from their work is cut in half. Their rewards in Bitcoin, that is cut in half. So the bad thing about this, obviously, is that each miner will get less Bitcoin per block mined. However, the good thing about this particular halving and what is unique about Bitcoin halvings is that this is something that is foreseeable. It's scheduled. So Bitcoin miners have known about this halving for years, and the best ones have prepared themselves accordingly. The second thing that makes people nervous is the fact that the hash rate is constantly growing for the Bitcoin network. That is how difficult it is to mine every block in the network. It's getting more and more difficult to mine. So, in addition to rewards per block mined having, you have the actual block itself being more and more difficult to mine. So, this gets people nervous about Bitcoin miners. And admittedly, there are some risks with Bitcoin miners and investing in them. That said, if you'd like to see how we invest our own money and join a community of halal-conscious investors, make sure to become part of the PIF community for more halal alpha, inshallah. So, if we look at history, the best performing miners, let's go to recent history, the best performing miners in 2023 were Mara, Bitfarms, BitDigital, Cypher, and Iris. And on a percentage basis, they outperformed Bitcoin by a lot. So Bitcoin was up 154%. These top five miners, at least in 2023, they were the top five, returned 554%. So if you go to recent history, definitely Bitcoin miners have been the better investment if you know which miners to invest in. Now, the negatives or what people get nervous about regarding Bitcoin miners and the approaching of the halving is offset by a few factors that I think people should take into consideration. So, the first being that the price, although the reward in Bitcoin is halving, the price of Bitcoin often doubles and even more than doubles. So, yes, you're not making, let's say, six Bitcoin that are each worth 30,000, but you may be making three Bitcoin per day or mining three Bitcoin per day that are worth 120,000. So, just because the number of Bitcoin is going down after the halving doesn't mean the revenue for these miners is necessarily going to go down. And when you look at the cycle, and if history is to rhyme, right now we've kind of broken from a historical pattern in that we've reached all-time highs before the halving, and previously uh, right around this time we were 50 or 60% below the all-time high. So we're ahead of schedule, and this is perhaps due to the ETFs. However, if you look at history, the majority of the increase in price, the appreciation in the price of Bitcoin happens after the halving, and the and Bitcoin reaches all-time highs around 12 to 18 months after the halving. So there's still some runway here for the price of Bitcoin to increase a lot more than it already has. So that's in favor of the miners. Additionally, what happens when the halving happens, at least historically, is that you see a spike in fees, in transaction fees. So Bitcoin miners earn money two ways. They earn money from the Bitcoins that they mine, but they also earn a percentage of the transaction fees that are collected on the Bitcoin network. So the transaction fees actually spike around the halving, and these contribute substantially to a non-trivial amount to the Bitcoin miners' bottom lines. And this is something that I don't really see many analysts talking about when they're evaluating Bitcoin miners, and that is the role that the transaction fees are going to play in supporting the Bitcoin miners post-halving. And also, the if you look historically, the percentage of miner revenue that is coming from these fees that are being ignored by many is actually increasing with time. So they're becoming more and more material to Bitcoin miners. And in fact, when we reach the 21 million Bitcoin mined, the fees are going to be all what sustains the Bitcoin miners. So the importance of these transaction fees is going to increase with time. And this time around, this cycle, it will perhaps play a bigger role than it has played in previous cycles in supporting Bitcoin miners. So the conclusion here is that yes, while there are things to watch out for with regards to uh, Bitcoin miners and them actually making it, there are things that are going in its favor, including fees offsetting the loss and rewards, the price of Bitcoin offsetting the loss and reward, and also some of these. So we talked about the hash rate going up over time, but some of the miners that will no longer be profitable to continue to mine will shut down. And this should cause a tempering in the increase in hash rate. So a tempering in the increase in the difficulty rate for mining Bitcoin. And I'll say something psychological that will really support miners is that post halving, it's going to become clear to investors which miners are going to make it and which miners do not. And this is why Bitcoin miners have experienced, at least historically speaking, they've experienced the greatest gains post halving. And that's because the picture becomes a lot more clear with regards to which miners have done their homework and have prepared themselves sufficiently for the halving and will be sort of going on in terms of their operations and which miners will end up having to shut down. And the winners are going to take the stakes of the losers. So all this suggests that Bitcoin miners can if you look at historically, if you look at the fundamentals, Bitcoin miners can outperform Bitcoin by a lot, but you have to pick the right miners. And some things that you need to watch out for when you're picking the right miners are number one, having a strong balance sheet. So you want to make sure that they don't have a lot of debt, so they can weather any happenings in the markets and in price. You have to make sure that the miners have the highest efficiency. So look at something like the all-in cost for mining a Bitcoin. Look at the cash cost for mining a Bitcoin, and that's going to tell you when it makes sense to continue to mine and when it makes sense to actually stop mining. You have to have robust growth plans if you're a Bitcoin miner because the hash rate is increasing over time. And unless you're at least as aggressive in your growth as the hash rate, your share of the pie is going to diminish with time. So, Bitcoin mining is very different from mining any other commodity in that, when the price goes up for gold, for example, they just dig a little deeper and they mine more gold. With Bitcoin, no amount of effort is going to increase the amount that is mined uh, per unit of time. So uh, the it's important for Bitcoin miners to always be increasing their mining rate faster than the hash rate is increasing, so that they're not being overtaken by their competitors. So you have to have a very aggressive mindset as a Bitcoin miner in terms of expanding your mining capacity. And some Bitcoin miners hodl what they mine, and some of them have a policy of selling everything that they mine. And I think during the bull run, there's going to be an advantage, all else being equal, that is, there's going to be an advantage to hodlers. So Bitcoin miners that actually have a balance of Bitcoin, because as the price of Bitcoin continues to surprise to the upside, if you have Bitcoin miners that have hundreds or thousands of Bitcoins, in their inventory, then their worth, their value as an enterprise is going to go up correspondingly with the value of the Bitcoins that they hold. So these are four things to watch out for when you are picking Bitcoin miners. And I do intend on adding another Bitcoin miner to our growth portfolio, inshallah, soon. And then I'll show you Exhibit A from, right before I went live in terms of the performance of miners. So actually today, Bitcoin hasn't done much of anything. And I actually told you guys that it seemed that Bitcoin was actually front running, or Bitcoin miners were actually front running Bitcoin. Uh, I said this yesterday, and in fact, we see that um, uh, lately the Bitcoin price went up, but the miners didn't go up correspondingly. Now that Bitcoin is at a lull, Bitcoin miners have appreciated substantially. At least today they have, and I suspect that um, they will do well. There may be, some pullback prior to the halving as people get nervous from those two things that I mentioned at the start of this presentation. But I think the majority of the gains will go to the winners, and they'll probably be post-halving if history is any indication. Obviously, if you'd like to follow our portfolios, make sure to become a PIF member, and more importantly, become a PIF member to join our awesome community. I love the people that we have. We have great insights from community members. People look out for one another. They answer each other's questions. They share their experiences. If ever there was a time to get serious about investing, I think now is the time. There's a lot of gains, a lot of halal alpha, inshallah, to be had. So do consider becoming a PIF member. And with that, let's go to questions. Cesar says market manipulation in response to Bitcoin miners not moving in lockstep with Bitcoin. Obviously, there are a lot of shenanigans that go on in the markets, especially equity markets, and they are obviously many times driven by the use of derivatives and other exotic financial instruments. Rashad, nice to see you. Salam, brother. How would you summarize Powell's meeting today? Perhaps we'll talk about the state of the economy, inshallah, in tomorrow's live, and we'll talk about where we are in the cycle and look at some data for crypto and all that good stuff. CLSK is top. Alhamdulillah, we have CLSK in our portfolio. Peace be upon you as well. Russian language, inshallah, perhaps, inshallah. Uh, Assalamu alaikum to everyone who is in Russia watching us. Oh, well, thank you for the nice shout out, Tim, uh, with regards to PIF membership. I really appreciate that. Makes me really happy. Um, Out of all publicly traded Bitcoin miners, would you please list all miners that you feel comfortable investing from a halal standpoint? That's a good idea. Perhaps I'll share that soon, inshallah. Nosan is up by 50%. Should we sell or keep it? Okay, more on that. We'll talk about that, inshallah, in the Discord. Inshallah, um, a lot of you made money there. Thank you for sharing. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Any recommendations for crypto exchange apart from Coinbase? Um, the number one thing to look at is that they are regulated. The exchange that you use is regulated by a respectable authority. You know, you saw what happened with FTX. Just make sure you're not investing in some company that's based out of, the Bahamas or something. And also, very important, don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Put your holdings in different wallets, different exchanges. Don't put them all in one place. Mara or CLSK, I can tell you what we have now, and that is CLSK, right? Did good. Perhaps we'll alhamdulillah, right? We haven't had in our portfolio. I think it's underperformed versus the ones that we have had, although um, I'll double check on that, but I do think that's the case. And again, I'm looking to add another Bitcoin miner, inshallah, to our portfolio. Thank you all for coming. Make sure to leave a like. Uh, let's see if we can get this live to 100 likes. We're typically stopping right right below the 100 mark for likes. So let's see if we can break that break that barrier and get to 100 likes and more on a live. So thank you all for tuning in. Take care. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.